Let me plant one.
I don't think my chat is even working.
And okay.
You have an issue?
No, I got it.
Okay.
This trackpad is just so sensitive. So sensitive.
It's a PC.
It's like the PC, right? Because it's Microsoft.
Yeah. We'll do live.
Are we cool with other people just jumping in, throughout somebody's dedicated slide if they have a comment to add or something like that?
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Step on my slide.
Yeah.
Kind of nice when it gets to be a little banter or conversation.
Yeah, it's not bad.
No question about it.
Well, if they bring up something, we just shut them down, right?
You don't have to worry about Ron speaking up. All right, you guys ready to rock and roll?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Frank DiCarlo, and welcome to another installment of New Jersey Dam Virtual Meetup. Today's webinar is entitled, Do You Need a Dam? And we have an incredible duo of panelists for you today. But before I introduce them, I'd like to take a moment and establish the entire New Jersey Dam team, for without them, this would not be possible. Deb Fanslow and Ron Gill. Deb, Ron, you're with us tonight?
We are.
Hey, how's it going?
Excellent, we're doing great. Why don't we take a moment and introduce yourselves?
Ron, you're on.
All right, well, after you, Deb. Go ahead.
Let's see, I'm currently working as a digital asset librarian in an embedded studio in the pharmaceutical company that you all know and love, I'm sure. And previous to that, I was working in the CPG industry, and before that, various places in libraries, museums, education, and prior to coming to DAM, I grew up in the design field, working in book publishing. So I grew to love DAM as a way to seek more efficiencies in the creative process, and almost like creative ops before we knew it was creative ops. So I like to go to different places and see how DAM is practiced in different industries.
Terrific. Thank you, Deb. Ron?
Hey guys, yeah, so I'm the digital asset manager over at Cognizant. It's a tech company. Some of you might have heard of it. But yeah, kind of a similar route as Deb. I went in as a graphic designer and then went through that entire chain, and always been part of the DAM space. And then around 2008, I decided to dedicate my entirety to DAM. So I've been doing that since. And a lot of the experience that I have is usually coming from the standpoint of marketing and design in DAM. So that's basically what I've been doing. And currently, again, at the tech company Cognizant, doing the same thing, digital asset management. And that's why we're all here. We love it.
Excellent. Thanks, Ron. Thank you both. And as promised, we have an incredible panel to complement our team this evening. Emily and Henrik. Actually, you want to take a moment and introduce yourselves. Henrik?
Thanks, Frank. So I'm Henrik de Gior. I'm a vendor-neutral consultant. I'm a startup mentor, podcaster, and writer. You may have heard of Another Damn blog and Another Damn podcast. I also started Another Damn, Rights.tech and Tagging.tech, and came out with a few books, which are listed on the slide. And we wrote about 3 different books last year. And I read a lot of different things. But today, we're talking about digital asset management, and I'm a vendor-neutral consultant in that space, running my own consultancy called Another Damn Consultancy. Thanks.
Excellent. Emily, welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm Emily Kolvitz. I am a DAM consultant as well. I work for a startup called Binder, and we have a digital asset management solution. I also do DAM internally at our company. So not only do I work with clients and their digital asset management I also do it for my company internally. And before that, I worked for JCPenney as a digital asset manager, primarily situated in the marketing department. I'm a librarian also, and that's me.
Terrific. Thank you all. So why don't we get started? Deb, you want to start things off?
Sure. One of the first things that comes up when someone says, "Do you need a dam?" Well, what is a dam, and what do you mean by that? And did you just curse? So the answer is kind of. The way that I like to look at it is different dimensions or facets, if you will, because I, like Emily, am a librarian, and we love to look at things as facets, because it means that you have different characteristics of digital asset management that all have equal importance. So for instance, one of the trickiest areas, again, is classification, another area that I'm completely nerdy about. So we have a lot of acronyms in our industry: DAM, MAM, CMS, two CMSs actually. CMS as in Content Management System or Collection Management System, Marketing Resource Management, Packaging Lifecycle Management, Learning Management Systems, Workflow Systems, even editorial systems that deal with XML workflows. A lot of these systems might feed into your DAM, but they're not they're like a separate software classification. And in many cases, there are entire industries built up around them. So when we talk about DAM, specifically here with Jersey Dam Meetup, we are talking about the management of rich media. So that means photos and videos and documents. And there's kind of I won't say a war, but a hot issue is, where does MAM fit? Because MAM is a media asset management system, which typically is more specialized in that it deals with long form video and really high functionality, fully featured systems that deal with broadcast media, for example. So some people do put that under DAM, whatever. It really doesn't matter. You're still dealing with digital assets in all of these cases. It's really a matter of where is your system of record for what type of data or content. The next dimension we talk about is the different tiers of DAM. So again, Jersey Dam Meetup and other meetup groups, even Henry Stewart, the industry as a whole really focuses on that mid-market DAM system and the people and the process and the information that goes around that. Enterprise DAM, certainly we're talking about global, huge organizations who use a DAM to manage gazillion bytes of information. One of the markets actually that we don't talk about a lot is single user DAM. Some people call it desktop DAM. That's really taken up by photographers who use it to manage their own collections or collections for their clients. Or actually, some studios might use single user DAM. They have similar sets of functionality, but they're not as scalable. And you're obviously, luckily, perhaps only dealing with one person's way of organizing things, which could be really sweet. So it's a different market. There's different people in that industry, but it's still digital asset management. Then we get into thinking about DAM licensing. So you might have proprietary versus open source. And this is really just who owns the code and where is it? Is it shared? And it's something to think about. It's not necessarily the first thing you think about, but it may become important down the line. And next comes your delivery method. This could be an entire separate webinar. So I actually like the way that the Real Story Group breaks it out. They're an analyst firm for the digital asset management industry, among a couple of others. They break it out into on-premise solutions, which is where DAM grew up, and to public-private cloud, SaaS, which is software as a service, and hybrid delivery methods. So it's really about, in that case, okay, we're going to do this DAM thing, but who owns it and where does it live? So not to go down the rabbit hole with that, but it is an important decision for many in the industry as far as regulations and where is your data and what do you control, what are your resources. So there are a lot of decisions to be made around that when you go down the road to DAM. Last but not least is a word we love in the metadata community, but it also relates to your software, and that's extensibility. So are you dealing with DAM on the simpler side where it's an out-of-the-box product where maybe you're configuring a few bells and whistles on the back end, or are you dealing with a really customized, scalable platform that you can extend into other systems and into your business practices? So there's a lot to think about with DAM, and I think you're going to find that our panelists have a lot of expertise and a lot to say about all of these different dimensions. So it's kind of deceptive, the initial question of, do you need a DAM? That's it for me.
Yeah.
I had myself on mute. Thank you.
Sure. I thought I stunned everybody.
Yeah.
Not at all. Henrik, you got a little bit of to say about evolution of dams.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Frank.
Yeah.
Typically, prior to DAM, most organizations follow this typical path that I've seen many, many times, and many of you will recognize this once I spell it out. So typically, organizations or companies, for that matter, have PCs of any sort, whether it's desktops or laptops or otherwise. And in the early days, they would store everything on there. And then eventually it went to CDs or tapes or DVDs or external hard drives. And they would accumulate these, but more and more and more of them. And then eventually it became flash drives or whatever the said media was that would store as much stuff as possible. And so they could share it or archive it or keep it or store it in these forms. And eventually that changed over to shared drives for some people within certain departments and certain groups. And then sometimes they would use different other systems that would be adopted by companies, organizations. And then eventually there was cloud storage systems that we're all very familiar with, that many organizations use and people use for personal purposes as well. And sometimes those borders cross quite often. And then eventually there's a pain point of, well, this is all great storage, but how do we find and search through these things? Because a lot of these vendors who sell all these products, and granted CDs are, well, gone, hence why they don't come on laptop. There's no CD drive on your laptops anymore for the most part. And same thing for DVDs, those are almost extinct. And external hard drives, well, those have become almost extinct with shared drives and cloud storage. So the main point was, well, first I need to be able to search and find stuff. And that's usually a pain point where it's like, well, there has to be a better way. And eventually it's not about storage, it's about management. And that's where DAM comes in. It's digital asset management, not digital asset storage. So all the things that I mentioned prior to is all about storage. It's not about searchability. It's not about findability. It's not about reuse or repurposing. It's all about storage. And eventually companies reach this pain point where I can't find my stuff is the common denominator. And that can't find stuff goes back to metadata and searchability and findability, like I mentioned earlier, so that they can reuse and repurpose their assets that they already have. And that's where DAM comes in, because for rich media, as Deb was mentioning, is where DAM has its strengths for audio, for photo, for video, and other rich media file formats that we are all very clear know and use all the time and need on a regular basis, whether it's a logo or a brand book or a photograph of something or someone or of a product or of a service being used from said company or organization. DAMs have this strength where they can work with other systems that Deb mentioned, like all those, the alphabet soup that she mentioned, and there's many others, like product information management systems and MAMs versus DAMs and things like that. But pretty much every DAM system that is worth its salt has an API, and it can tie with other systems. So basically the DAM becomes your hub for all of its rich media. It becomes your single source of truth. And if you don't have this single source of truth, you just have storage, and storage is not management. I would refer you back to the 10 core characteristics of DAM. if you visit that, you'll see the 10 core characteristics of what makes a digital asset management system. And you'll notice very quickly, a lot of systems that even claim to be a DAM don't match these systems that are actually meeting all these 10 core characteristics. I won't mention them necessarily. I'll let you take a look at them because I believe this slide deck will be shared. You can also Google 10 core characteristics of DAM, and I believe the link will be shared with you later. I'll send them in the chat notes as well. Just make sure that you all have it in case of, but that's it for me.
I'd love to hop in here on the cloud storage part, specifically, and I hate that this is kind of advertising for them, but I do think it's the elephant in the room. So what about Box, Dropbox, Google Drive? And what's the difference between them and a digital asset management system? And one thing I like to tell my clients is that there's quite a few key differentiators, but the two that really stick out to me that I think resonate with people very easily are the customizable metadata for your files. And then you also have this shared digital space across your business with a DAM that you don't have with Google Drive or Box, because you have to explicitly share out your files with people. DAM is the opposite. It's open until you restrict it from people. And also in a way, when you have Box and Dropbox and Google Drive, and I think Microsoft has OneDrive. I don't know if that's still a thing, but there's tons of different storage places. And when you have all of these, you're also making little silos across your business. So when you make these little silos, you don't have the ability to have robust analytics across your assets as well, because they're not in a central repository. So you don't have a single source of truth. You also can't relate your assets to other departments. So sometimes you might have assets that are created from other assets from different departments, and you don't necessarily see that connection because they're in separate folders on someone's desktop, in Google Drive, or, et cetera. And they're also really dependent on folder structures, which, going back to what Deb was saying earlier about facets, we really like facets because you can search for things from a variety of different paths versus having a folder structure. Or a hierarchical folder structure. There is a very specific way you have to find things. And that's kind of an old paradigm that people aren't really ready to let go of. But I think
goes through with file names. It's like an old paradigm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they love the file names. I love file names.
And then finally, I think they're personal repositories primarily.
Yeah.
It's not a digital library to me. It's a personal repository, and that's fine. We do have our own personal way of managing things, but it's not DAM.
Right. Yeah, because folder structures and file naming conventions fail quite often because it makes sense to the person who originally created it.
Yep.
Pretty much no one else. And then it breaks down very often.
I actually point my personal DAM up to my cloud storage to give it that layer that's missing. And it works pretty well.
But you're using it in a single person.
Yes, the single user DAM. Yes. But I wanted it in the cloud, and I was like, I love, my cloud service, but I can't search it. I can't do X, Y, and Z. So.
Excellent points. No, those are not DAMs. Why don't we talk a little bit about who and where? Unless we have a couple questions coming in. Actually, why don't we just speak on this question we have right now? Can you all speak to governance as a differentiator of DAM for Drive services? Can you all speak to governance as a differentiator of DAM for Drive services?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's, like I said, Google Drive, Box, Dropbox, those are personal repositories. So if you were to have governance for them, it would be really hard to enforce across an organization. So even if you did have Google Drive for your whole company and everyone has their own account, you're not going to go into each person's account and go make sure they're following any type of rules that you put around managing and sharing assets. That would be extremely difficult and painful to manage files that way as an admin.
Yeah, I've seen it where some of these systems are actually blocked by the company servers or the company internet, so that you cannot access them at all. So you can't upload, you can't download, you can't access them. Granted, people use their phones and access them still. So there's always workarounds. Sadly, if you make it, you can break it. Is basically the short answer to all of this. You know, if Edward Snowden can get it out of said system, so can anyone else. So it's a challenge to get that governance in and enforce it. But governance without enforcement and without rules that evolve with the times and the technology that is being used by said organization doesn't really mean anything. It's just a bunch of rules that no one actually uses or pays attention to. So that's really important to keep in mind. So people are going to go to the easiest system possible. And if your DAM or whatever systems are not easy to use, they're going to use outside systems that make their lives easier and their work easier. So keep that in mind as well in your governance.
Yes, I also think that the governance is also dependent on the licensing structure. Depending on what licensing structure that you have with whatever third-party system, you're allowed a certain level of governance, but you're not going to have the same as if you had your own system set up. It's just how it's their keys, not your keys.
Good point.
Good stuff. Thank you. Emily, you want to talk a little bit about who and where?
Yep, absolutely. So a lot of times people are wondering who owns the DAM in an organization. Does marketing own it? Does IT own it? Is there a dedicated digital asset management team? Maybe, but not as often as I would like to see. So I see DAM starting out in the marketing department for a lot of companies. They're usually the first part of the organization that's really feeling all the pain, and it's because they're creating so many assets and they're having to find them, repurpose them, make renditions, change things, etc. So they have a really urgent need as content producers, and so that's what I see people coming from marketing. It doesn't have to be marketing that owns the DAM initiative. I think it does start off that way in a lot of instances, but there's definitely other areas of the business that can benefit from DAM and might actually be, the first people to propose having a DAM. And that could be the sales team, it could be IT, because they're hearing a lot of the same feedback from different people throughout the organization. And so they're considering, well, do we build something? Do we have something already? And it does make sense, I think, for IT to own part of the initiative of the DAM. But I do think also that if you're thinking about launching a DAM, so this talk is basically we're talking to people who are wondering if they need a DAM. I think you should be considering all of the systems in your organization, and all the departments in your organization. So you should be thinking about not only your pain points, but how other people could benefit from the DAM in your organization. And I say that for a few reasons. For shared budget is a great one. Marketing spend, while it's gone up, there's still pressure on marketing to keep costs low. So anytime you can share costs across departments, so let's say the sales team wants something and marketing wants something and legal really wants it, I think there's definitely pain points in all those departments, and you can share some of the costs there. Now, ownership during versus after implementation is another topic that's important. You may have a project team that's involved with launching the DAM, but who's going to own it after? Not just the department, but the individual. Some companies, I think, are not aware that a dedicated, full-time, if possible, administrator is really crucial to success of your dam. If you can afford it, go for it. If you can't afford it, find some budget for it, because it really is a full-time undertaking. You can hire a consultant who is definitely, you need a consultant as well to help guide you through the process. But also having someone on the ground who knows the business and who is embedded in the business will help launch your dam and for it to be successful. So what else did I want to mention on this? Also wanted to talk a bit about integrations. So you should be thinking about how DAM can be the invisible glue between all of your systems. And that does require a lot of vision and knowledge about what systems and capabilities you already have in your organization. So kind of taking the pulse on what your company has and being able to approach your DAM implementation with knowing, okay, I want to connect this to my CMS and I want to pick images while I'm in Adobe Photoshop directly from my DAM, from my single source of truth. And that is something you should be thinking about now before you're even getting a DAM, not 6 months after you've launched.
I also would like to add to that, when you're thinking about your digital supply chain, it's not just internal to your company anymore. It's who are the aggregators and the distributors you're working with once that content eventually leaves your DAM. How are you integrating or coordinating with other vendors or agencies that you're either getting creative content from or delivering to? So that integration picture gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you need to start talking about standards, which is another webinar.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I just want to add that, like, the idea of a dam is it's as much as a concept, but it's an actual thing, you know, like product or system, because it is how your company is utilizing their materials, their assets, and that ownership goes across the board. So that everybody in the company owns that or should own that. And I think that's our feeling on that, is because it's an integral part. It's not something that, okay, well, that's just IT or that just belongs to production. It is getting bigger, and it is part of the lifeblood of how your company, in either a small scale or a large scale, how it communicates with the outside world and how it utilizes its material. So yeah, as far as like who owns it, you just have to convince everybody that they all need to own that.
Yeah, for it to be sticky.
That needs to happen. They all need to grab part of that and own it, because in the end it benefits everybody.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. DAM pretty much started with production departments, really, the printing prepress industries. And I've seen it within packaging production, for example. And I love the fact that it's moved over to the marketing/IT space, because it's becoming more about not just the content, but what do we need to do with it and where does it need to go? And then at the same time, we've got the creative ops industry coming into its own. So it's going to be interesting to see, maybe, you know, that ownership will become more centralized as a service or a center of excellence. One can only hope.
I hope so. Yeah, it would make everything easier, wouldn't it? So having to, like, you know, clamor for one section and say, look at this area, because really we need to focus on this, and everybody needs to get in buy-in. But yeah, it's the machine. We all need to get onto the
Speaking of that, the integrations piece and connecting to your systems, I think that's not just, you know, different departments having use cases to use the DAM system, but when you integrate with other tools, you're really just like putting your tentacles into your digital ecosystem and just sticky. DAM becomes sticky for the organization because connecting systems is tough. First of all, you have to think about it. Like, what do I actually want to do? Sometimes people are like, oh, we're gonna integrate. We want to integrate them. Well, what do you want it to do?
Yeah.
What data is moving? What data is changing? What's the point of the integration? What's your use case? And once you have, I think, your DM system really plugged in, and you have this well-oiled machine of digital systems all working together, that's the dream state for DAM, right?
Yeah. Well, I like your phrase. We'll call them sticky tentacles.
That's a new visual.
Yeah, damn sticky tentacles. I like that.
Yeah, it also helps to walk through the assets life cycle from ideation, like coming up with the idea, like we're going to create these assets for said purpose, and walk it all the way through that purpose, all the way to the endpoint of whatever those endpoints look like. Nowadays, there's many, many channels, not just print, not just mobile, not just social.
Oh yeah.
Many other things. It could be packaging. It could be something else. It could be in a video form. So it's just a matter of walking it through so you can understand where those integration points are and where the pain points are today, and so you can get the speed to market.
There you go.
Yeah, it's getting more complicated. You definitely, this is the system to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, it's going to integrate with other systems. Sorry.
Sold. We're sold on that.
So
yeah. Granted, we're the pro, right?
right.
We'll talk about the cons later.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did we answer this question that came in?
I love this question. I think it's a good sidebar. How do we stop people from using Dropbox to share files and use the DAM MAM instead? And it's coming up more and more for me. I'm sure it's coming up for everyone else as well. As the DAMs continue to expand and more people are using them, and you're introducing more and more people to that central hub, you're getting their workflows and the way that they're used to working, and lo and behold, they're using Dropbox.
Yeah.
And, to me, it's just education. And it's going through these workflows over and over again the same way, so that you establish a standard operating procedure and bringing these people in on that workflow.
Yeah.
To stop people from using Dropbox, and as it's becoming more and more popular, and I hear it all the time. Well, I have Dropbox. Frank, can't use a digital asset management system. And it's again, it's just all education, right? It's showing them the differences and how much more you can gain by implementing these workflows that we know are tried and true.
Yeah.
And there's multiple cases on where it fails, like when you have to mass share a file and it breaks because the link can't withstand so many users. There's the seat counts, which also is something to keep in mind as far as how many people can integrate or use that file or collaborate with that file at the same time. So back to the single use DAM, which we're not really talking about, versus having a company of 100,000 or 1 million people, or even just 10,000 people, or just 100 people, for the sake of argument, collaborating on a single asset or several assets for the sake of argument that are highly used on a very regular basis. Like, our latest brochures for the quarter, and every single salesperson needs to access these across the entire world, or across the country, or just in a region. And Dropbox failed again. I wonder why. Or any of those cloud networks which aren't meant for collaboration purposes in that mass or sharing. It might be made for sharing, but it's not made to actually find what you're really looking for. It's like, where's the latest one? That was last quarter. Oops.
Yeah, it's not. It's just not meant for those systems. Yeah, I mean, like that, you can't add your own specific metadata to it.
And rights.
Yeah. Rights management. Oh, forget about rights management. Control.
No. Yeah. Forget rights management. Forget metadata management. To your point, or taxonomy.
Yeah.
They're all foreign concepts to those for the most part.
A small environment, a small team environment. You're trying to get something out the door, and that's just what I see that happens. From my end, it's like knee jerk. We need to get this stuff together. This is our team. Let's just get a box license so we can get this out the door. And then you have that, and you're working with your development team to try and figure out an API that'll integrate that into your solution, and then things get difficult.
Yep. How about version control? Oops. Oh,
Oh boy, easy.
Did I say the V word?
How about some criteria for dam systems?
Criteria.
Yeah. What do you think, Henrik?
Was that a
So
question?
when is it time to move to a dedicated dam system versus using said other systems that we talked about earlier? Well, first it's the volume of users that are actually going to need to access these files. Just access, right? Not edit necessarily. So there's going to be a large pool of people who need to access these files. Then there's a smaller pool that need to edit. And there's maybe another pool that need to have other controls over those assets, for like version control or upload. Not everyone should upload, realistically speaking, because then you definitely need a gatekeeper to take the garbage out on a daily basis.
Yep.
For the sake of argument. So the volume of users, I would say it's definitely a lot more than one. I would say it's probably in the neighborhood of 5+.
Yeah.
Usually in the hundreds or thousands is the typical response for across an entire department, not just a tiny little group of like 1 or 2 photographers or a studio, but realistically speaking, the entire life cycle of who would approve and request all these assets. Like, oh, well, there's said person who said, I need a bunch of pictures of these new products. And then there's the photographer internally or externally that photographed these things, then who would maybe upload them or contribute them into a queue. And then there's the gatekeeper who would tag them, not necessarily the photographer or the other creative persons involved. And then there's the designer who would need to access these as well. And then create these new assets, which are maybe a layout of some sort, whether it's online or otherwise, or in print, or video montages, or lower thirds. There's plenty of other use cases. And then all the way to the endpoints of how is it going to be disseminated, or who needs to disseminate this information and who needs to access them. So it's the number of users that you need to keep in mind. And you can start with a guinea pig department like marketing, for the sake of argument, which would be really, really excited about this kind of system, or creative ops, which is a subset of some kind of production group, which is often under marketing, unless there's another type of group that has production, maybe R&D, maybe other groups. So it really depends on your organization. And then, of course, the number of assets, the volume. So what's the magic number, if there was one, for the sake of argument, of when you need to consider a dam? Well, usually it's the number I've heard is around 10,000 plus. Yeah. 10,000 plus assets. They can be photographs, they can be videos, they can be a culmination of all those. They can be graphics, like logos or otherwise. They can be brand books, they can be PDFs. It varies quite widely. It could be sales sheets, for the sake of argument, that regularly change over with the image of the product and the latest SKUs and prices. So it really varies quite widely. But 10,000 is usually I would say the cutoff point to make it worth that investment, because the investment is going to be something that most organizations will consider maybe on a quarterly basis, but more likely on an annual basis once they review their annual budgets, because they usually have sticker shock when they first see what price, what it's going to cost them. And it's like, oh, it doesn't cost $1 or $100 or $1,000. Oh, it's not like said system that I create my stuff with on a regular basis with a single seat. No, not really. It's a lot more expensive. And then usually, for the most part, a lot of systems, they charge you per seat, meaning how many you pay per user. So keep that in mind. And then you pay for storage, and then you pay for a license, and then you pay for support. So there's a lot of things to consider. Yeah. So when is it time to consolidate dam systems? Well, there is sometimes companies accumulate because some departments don't talk to other departments. I know, shocker. There's one company that does this, or more than one organization that doesn't talk to each department or each group. And so what happens is each department may accumulate their own dam, and they don't say, hey, you have a dam? Oh, I have a dam too. Well, what do you use? Oh, you use that system? Well, we use this system. And that is very common, unfortunately, because there's not enough communication across the boards. So they purchase or license a bunch of dam systems, and then it's a matter of consolidating, because dam is a single source of truth for your media. If you have more than one dam, dam is dam. And so what are you trying to do with dam X versus dam Y? Could it be managed by permissions if you have to manage certain things in one group versus the other? Yes. Or groups or roles that should be only seeing certain assets? Yes. So keep that in mind. So I do a lot of consolidation of systems and migrations of other systems to other systems, whether they don't like one system versus, oh, well, we already have 5. Should we only have 1 or 2? Like, might be a good idea. Maybe you should consider that. Let's look at why that might be logical. So there is diminishing returns in having multiple systems because you're paying for all of them and you're paying for support for all of them, but how many people are actually using them? If there's more than one person, then you may need to just consolidate. If there's only one person managing the system, you definitely need to consolidate the system.
Yeah.
And then it's just a matter of killing the other dams, literally.
Killing. I actually wanted to add to that too. I've seen some cases where there are multiple systems. They're not all dam systems, but maybe there are other related systems that have a repository that have been used as a dam, but don't have the functionality that's needed. But that group still wants to really hold on to it because it has that one key functionality that they need, but it's not available in a dam system. So instead of looking at best of breed and integrating, they'll try to really just hang on to that core system and make you prove that business case. And you know, it's a matter of, at that time, like, who has, you know, the money and the time to really research comprehensively through the ecosystem what's right for your needs, instead of looking at, you know, various silos that exist and not looking at the big picture. So I've seen that as well.
Yep. And one of the things that's key with DAM is you should be able to measure those results as far as how many uploads, how many users, how many people are actively using the system rather than just being registered to use the system.
Yeah.
So you want to look at those metrics as well, meaning how often are those assets actually accessed, or are they the bell bottoms of the organization for the sake of argument? And they need to be, well, donated or archived.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's an interesting question that came in on training. So just about speaking on training users to tag assets on whether they should be tag files or not.
Yeah. Well, what was the question about that? Because it sucks.
That's a big one.
Because it sucks doing that.
Yeah, so many people love to tag.
People like to be trained.
Really.
People don't like that.
Yeah.
Very hard against it. Yeah.
Yeah. Most people don't like to tag, and then as soon as they upload, they're like, "Oh, you want metadata? Meta what? How do you spell that? No, I don't want to do that. I just want
yeah. It's very difficult to get people to tag stuff.
Yep.
Especially when they like, oh, now it's something else I got to do. Yeah, they don't. They don't like that.
Yeah, and you can basically measure how long it takes to upload something, including with the metadata tagging. That's one of the metrics that I have organizations do, because like, you know, if it takes 3 to 5 minutes to tag an asset, a single asset, you know, multiplied by 1,000, how many people are tagging? Yeah. So there's solutions that are coming out slowly but surely. There's about 8 DAM systems out there that can actually do image recognition and do the very first pass on tagging in a general sense, but you still need institutional knowledge to tag it, like with your SKU or with a person's names that are relative to your organization. So keep that in mind. That number is going to grow, of course, because those systems are using APIs from other well-known technologies, or technologies that will become even better known for video and image recognition. But as far as tagging and as far as training to tag or upload, I would limit the number of people who can upload, but you also want a queue of people who are going to be monitoring that intake on a daily or a weekly basis, depending on how often you upload assets. So where I worked in previously, we had 5,000 new unique assets per week. So on a daily basis, we would go through the upload and we would find all the errors, and we would throw it back at the uploader and say, we suggest you do this with the assets. And we would hold them to it. And then we would hold them even more accountable by emailing their boss with them, making sure that within 48 hours it's fixed. And we got amazingly great results and low error rates. Amazingly, I don't know why,
Yeah.
but usually when you tie accountability and governance to it, it works really, really well.
Oh yeah.
I
Of course, you have to train people.
Training, governance, yeah.
Yeah.
I encourage the viewers to look at one of our other videos having to do with just metadata.
Yeah.
Some of the things that we encourage here are put the onus on the vendors. Make sure that the upload functions require a certain amount of metadata that is to be filled out before it even hits the servers.
I mean, you're paying for the service.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Write it
Your money's worth.
with the vendor. If you're getting images from an external image supplier, that's how I meant vendor in this case, and you're having them do, retouching on the assets, why not just throw in some metadata application as well while you're at it? You're already paying them to do a service. They're already in Photoshop. They're already there.
Yeah.
All you have to do is just type a few words or, do some batch tagging in Lightroom.
Bingo.
That's one of the things that can rear its ugly head for companies who are just procuring or implementing their first dam, and they're working with agencies. They might not realize until farther along than you'd like that, hey, we might need to renegotiate our contracts with our agencies, because it is the best practice to have that metadata added as early in the creative process as possible.
Yeah. And having a one pager where you have the standards of what you want and how you want it tagged and where you want it tagged within all the metadata fields that you may have, whether it's in the system or embedded in the asset, because some metadata is associated to the asset in said system, like a DAM, and some is embedded into the file. And not all file formats can accept metadata. Keep that in mind.
One of the things that's funny, because that's the slide I thought was going to be the quickest. One last thing. I actually give an example, again, back to the printing industry. So designers are used to working with specs when they deliver files to printers, but agencies aren't used to getting specs on metadata. And I feel like it's really the same thing. I mean, you wouldn't deliver to a client without aligning to their specifications. Mm-hmm. So we all have, specifications for how those files need to be delivered, how they need to be named, where they need to be put. And hey, here's what you got to put in them.
That's one of the things that we've got as a challenge to the vendors. It's you're creating materials for us. What really needs to happen in the SOW is the final output. So the final output is all the high-res files that you have for us, whether they be collected in a package file, if they're InDesign prints or whatever, or like video files in multiple formats. They should have at least some rudimentary level of metadata tagging that fall in line to what we have is set up as our structure. I mean, that should be part of the SOW when you're looking at it, because that is a lot of work when it's aggregated. In like one-offs, it's not so bad, I can do it, whatever. But, if I have like 50, 60 files coming at a time from a vendor, that becomes more labor intensive. And then at some point should be taken care of by them because they're delivering the final output. So that should be part of what you're requesting from your vendor. Yep.
Again, we should, for anyone who would like some more information on that, we have another video talking about metadata with Rock and Roll Hall of Famer Heidi Quicksilver. It's good stuff. Ron, you want to hit a couple of points on pros of having a DAM system?
Pros of having a DAM. Yeah, well, I think we can all agree, like a lot of the points here that are on they make sense. The single source of truth, I mean, I always think of it as like some Lord of the Rings kind of like, it's like saying the single source of truth, the eye of Sauron is watching you. But, yeah, that's exactly it. Like, it is the collected materials of your entire company, like your IP of your company, that is in one central area repository that can be utilized. It's the well. We're all going to draw from that well. That part is like obviously leads into the self-service that like your company has a well of materials that you can pull from. Like everything here that they've said. Like one of the things that I really want to emphasize here though is that like your brand identity, your brand management is critical, and it can be helped immeasurably through a dam. Like, if I have a number of companies that are across global channels, the best way for me to make sure that the entire company is, on the same page, has the most current, logo, most current brand guidelines, is through a dam. And the best thing about that is, it's because, depending on how you set it up, it's behind your corporate firewall, so it's secure. It has everything that you want as far as it's structured metadata, so it's easily searchable by your employees based on the things that they already know, the criteria that they already know, the stuff that you've set up that they can understand, whether by campaign or whatever. That's part of the system. That's part of the ecosystem. So that's essential in having a dam. Anybody else want to chime in on why it's awesome to have a dam? Because it totally is.
I want to add. Sorry, go ahead, Frank.
I said we don't have that much time.
Just very quickly, one thing that people might not think about if they're looking at a dam system is the asset relationships. And I think it's becoming more and more important as we're moving into the world of product metadata and maturity on that front, and even semantic relationships. So not all dam systems are very mature in that space, but it's something that brings a huge return on investment in relating your assets and findability.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. One of the biggest things that we're finding is, making sure that all assets that are part of a single campaign are related and can be searched within that campaign. So, obviously you're going to have, SMEs that handle, the metadata tagging so that it's appropriate to those campaigns. But once you're able to find them or know that they exist, then the whole scope of all the assets in that campaign are available to you. And in a marketing sense, that's awesome, especially in a globalist sense, because you have companies who are very siloed, and there are companies, there are teams in different countries that do things very differently. But if you can kind of corral them into these are the campaigns that we've worked on, then they can draw from that and kind of gear it to their market. That's part of the thing that's awesome about having a dam, is that you have a large company, and even though you're all in different teams and in different parts of the globe, you can speak the same language, and you're drawing from the same well of materials that have been kind of blessed by the overall company. And that's just speed to delivery. That's everything that's good right there. Or a dam.
Going back to something you said earlier, Ron, about the dam is your place for your company's IP.
Yeah.
I love that. It's great. And that's the thing I wrote on here, is the thing I love about dam is the knowledge sharing.
Yeah.
Which is tricky because you have a lot of competing interests for knowledge sharing. You have security concerns about sharing too much information. You have concerns about ownership of your own assets versus what's intellectual property of the company. That's also this desire to share things, which is, sharing is a way for your company to kind of build on ideas of other people. And I think transparency and sharing can lead to greater innovations in a company, and DAM is a digital space that enables that. So knowledge sharing for me is one of the huge benefits in digital asset management that it provides.
Oh, I totally agree with you on that. I've seen it across the board when we've implemented stuff. It's more like we'll have an office in Brazil. But we really like what you've done for the Northeast campaign, and it just, you need that because that's part of the company that helps the company grow, and it's this kind of repository that makes that all happen, because you all have access to it. You might not be able to, download it onto your hard drive depending on your privileges, and that's, part of the thing that makes this great. But, you all have access to see what each other is doing. And across the company, especially if you don't have multiple offices, that is like, you can't put a price on that. Or I guess you can't put a price on that.
You probably can quantify
Yeah,
it.
there could be a price.
Yeah, you could actually put a price on how often an asset is used and reused and repurposed.
Yep.
Realistically speaking, because you know how much it should, how much it costs you to create, realistically speaking. So there's many companies that keep creating the same asset over and over and over again, or reacquiring it over and over and over again because they can't find it. So they keep creating it and acquiring it repeatedly. And if you, so let's pretend you only created internally, you can basically equate how many hours of their time it took to create, no matter how many people are involved, and also how many, what the materials were, etc. And then any licensing involved, because once you're able to search and find, not just search and search and search and scroll and click and not find, repeat, but search and find, and then use and then reuse and then repurpose those assets, then you actually have ROI. You have return on investment on your assets, which is the golden goose that everyone wants.
Oh, yeah.
You can get.
By the way.
Yeah, sorry? Sorry? I missed that one.
The gun. We got
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Wait, someone just brought up a great point about versioning, and how versioning is also
Absolutely.
a very big pro. And yes, it especially when you're dealing with print production, and I come from a print background, so version 1, version 2 of an Illustrator file that needs to go to a print campaign. Yes, I mean that's critical that you're all on the same page with that, and the AD has created something that is version 6 point whatever that needs to go to print, and everybody's on the same page, because that can happen where if you don't have a centralized repository that updates your versioning, then the wrong version will go to print and you'll have problems.
And true version control, not overwriting.
Exactly. Yeah. Live updates. Yeah.
So we have our pros, and we already started talking about some other our double negative here, cons of not having.
Yeah.
But does anybody have some more examples they wanted to get into?
Well, I've got a good one. Okay, so the not having one, and this was early on in one of the companies that I used. Not having one was we had, and this is multinational. So some of the materials were located in England, across the pond, and they were mailed 3 days, air mail, to our office in New York area. And when we got them, 3 days later, they are of course mission critical for print advertising that need to happen. When we got them 3 days later, unfortunately they did not provide a 220, 120 volt converter for the drive. So it was the actual hard drive that we shipped over, because it was over a terabyte, which would have taken forever, I guess, in cloud. But it took forever. We got the hard drive, and we lost another day because we still had to go to Best Buy to get 220 to 120 converter. So yeah, that sucked.
Yeah, I've heard of the example where said organization uses partners to create their stuff in another country for the sake of arguments, and they also do use a hard drive for the sake of arguments, and that hard drive was stuck in customs for a few months, which doesn't help anyone, realistically speaking. And there's other ones where it's another challenge where I think I spoke about the use of a said cloud storage sharing system where everyone in the world wanted the same file. It was literally distributed publicly. And then, oh, it broke. I wonder why. It's not meant for that number of users. So it's really down to like how fast do you want it. So UDP nowadays is even faster than FTP, and these type of systems can be tied in and share that terabit or petabyte file if necessary in a reasonable time frame. It may not be like lightning speed necessarily, but UDP is one of the faster technologies out there available. And there are multiple technologies that are better known under different brands that tie in with DAM systems. So you can share a file across nations, for the sake of argument, or even continents. Well-known sports agencies use them to transfer a file, a video file from one end of the country to the other. So you can actually watch it in real time. So that actually happens.
I have a question, Henrik, because I only know of like one source that does UDP and it's proprietary. Do you know of any open source UDP provider? Is that a thing?
Yeah, there's several UDP providers, which I'm happy to share afterwards.
Yeah,
yeah,
great.
Yeah. There's a number of them. Luckily, there's more than one.
Yeah. Terrific. Anybody else want to share an example?
Yeah, I have one involving hard drives as well. Imagine that. And this is when I just started getting into DAM. We didn't have a DAM. I worked at the Oklahoma History Center on a newspaper digitization project. So we literally scanned. Okay, first of all, a photographer shot a newspaper onto microfilm, and then we scanned the microfilm. And then we cut the assets, edited them, sorted them, applied metadata to them, then put them on a hard drive and sent them to someone else to upload to a system, which is, it's ridiculous when you say it out loud, right?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit.
It is. I have an example. A nonprofit organization with over 1 million physical assets, again, digitizing a lot of their content. They did not have the budget or the staff for a DAM system. And I think in the works was perhaps some sort of merger to maybe the parent organization was going to implement a DAM, but it was like taking forever and whatever. So the workflow became really duplicative. We had a back-end homegrown database where we entered metadata, but there was no front end. And so in order to get a front end, we had another product that had a web-based portal. So our workflow was to enter the metadata twice, once into the first database and then over some of it for the actual digital object over into this other database, just because that could shoot it up to the web. So literally I was entering it twice and it killed me to do it. But yeah, it really was a lot of expense and a lot of time, bringing a lot of error in there in the process. And there were, it really depends on what you're looking to get out of it and what your scale is to make that business case to get the funds and the staff that you need to do it. But that's a really good way is to use those metrics to say, like, here's how much time we're wasting doing this twice.
Yeah.
So.
No, I can see that.
Not good.
Yeah.
Someone mentioned return on investment before. This can be tricky, or at least it was years ago. It's getting a little easier. But why don't we touch a little bit about the return on investment having to do with digital asset management?
Yeah, ROIs. There are a number of vendors out there. I think most of the big guys have them. ROI calculators. I don't know about you guys. Actually, I kind of do know about you guys. But, yeah, I don't place any faith in these calculators. I mean, they're great and all. They're good for when you're, trying to bring a business use case scenario in front of, like, the money people, I suppose, right? When you say like that you need this system because this is how much it's going to save you in the long run. These calculators do make sense in that sense, although, you know, some of the metrics that they use to get these figures, I'm a little dubious on it, because a dam system, excuse me, is highly dependent on how your company is going to use it. So, production company is going to be very different in calculating their ROI than, someone company that's using it for, omni-channel distribution, or, a repository for their internal materials and marketing division. Now, I've seen these ROI calculators, and they're great, and they do make sense. I think some of them was like mentioning, I think Frank had mentioned earlier on, it was like 37% of wasted time is due to looking for materials, and another like 8 minutes of a day, but it's all dependent on exactly what that means. So, for example, if you were looking at it from a production standpoint for creating, print materials, designer, the ROI calculation would be that the designer is charged, whatever their rate is per hour times how many hours they're spent looking for just the materials that they need to produce the print material. That's part of an ROI calculation, which is very different from any other type of dam system that would use it, slightly different. So the ROI calculators, yeah, they're great so far as like a rough estimate ballpark figure, but they're really dependent on how you're planning on using your dam system. So if your dam system is not, repurposing assets from, a stock image house, then that ROI calculator is not necessarily your cup of tea. But yeah, I mean, a grain of salt with those, and vendors will, throw that out there because, it's a quick and easy calculator to help you figure out how much of a business use you can have in this, and how you can, leverage that into the need. So keep in mind, unless anybody else has something different on that. Yeah, I don't.
I have something. So I definitely agree that most of the time, not useful. It's a gross measure.
Yeah.
So it's a starting place, but one thing I think we should also talk about is not only, like you said, are the KPIs different from company to company, but the KPIs that speak to the buyers or the capital committees may also vary wildly from company to company. Do you speak the same language as the person who's approving the budget? Like, what metrics did they care about? You may have metrics that you think speak to them, but I think you should also take time getting to know them and what would convince them to, on a personal level.
Yeah, I've seen in a lot of cases where some organizations, they don't care about cost avoidance. They just want cost savings, and that's it. And a lot of dam is both, and some of it is harder to prove. But you're right, Emily. It's absolutely about the leadership and what is important to them, and how are you meeting the goals, the larger goals of the organization, and tying the dam initiative into that. Yeah,
that's tricky. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how you would best approach that, but yeah, I mean, so far as
look at that mission statement and those goals for the fiscal year, and work it.
You could try it. Yeah, I mean, yeah, but hard and fast, the ROI calculators. I wouldn't use that as your your go-to. Yeah, use that as a ballpark. But don't use that as your go-to. Don't use that as your like concrete, this is why we should have it. Because unless it absolutely measures the kind of workflow that you're doing, then yeah, it makes sense. But otherwise, yeah, it's. I've seen calculations on data rot, for hard drive failures that kind of fall in the same category where it's the vendor is producing it, so they're saying, well, our error rate is this because of how many failures we've had within this test group. It's all relative.
I have this fantasy one day that we're going to get to the point where we are with our computers. Like, we don't have to make an ROI calculation for our computers. Like, we need them to do business. And I hope that one day, DAM is how we do business at our company. You come to your orientation on day one. This is how we manage information at this company.
Yeah.
This is what we use. And there's really no other way. And that's my fantasy.
Well, I'm with you on that, and I don't think that's so much a fantasy, Deb.
Thank you.
I'm sure that that's happening. That's going to happen.
Yep.
Because that's, that was Occam's razor. That's the path of least resistance. That's going to happen.
Deb, we're working on it every day. Get there.
Thank you. I have faith.
Yeah, and some of the more realistic ones is why do they really want a dam? A lot of these are sometimes cost avoidance, or even just not getting sued as often because they need to manage their assets. Not just fine, but once you find it, can you use it legally again or once, or can you repurpose it for another project or another channel or in a different country or whatever the use case is. And you can tie rights management, other technologies, not just metadata saying, yes, you can, versus no, you shouldn't see this file in permissions or roles, but also there's rights management technologies that can be tied together with DAM systems so that you can avoid the oops, we weren't supposed to use that video in these other countries. It was only licensed for the United States. But now the talent in this video is suing us for a lot more than what a dam is actually costing us for the next 10 years.
Henrik, that requires getting those contracts out of the drawers in the file cabinets and actually digitizing them, perhaps in a document management system.
Or it's standardizing the formats.
Attached, integrated into your dam or something. Yeah. You really have to have that support. And what I found is, the dam is a tool, but it's the policies, the training, and the governance behind it that make those workflows support the goals that you have. So, it's all well and good if you can put in like some code that means, yes, you can use it, but it's not that simple. So you really have to use more than one tool in most cases.
True.
Rights.
Yep, exactly.
I totally agree. I just want to bring something up, and I don't know if we've mentioned it or not, but in your selection of a dam, if your idea of a dam, what you really need to have more than anything, in my opinion, and I hope you guys agree with me on this, but is the overall need and like the structure of what you plan on having, because that determines everything else. So if you have a solid plan of this is our workflow, this is what we need to happen, then the dam you can build around. If you don't have that solid concrete goal of this is how we want to handle our materials, then your dam is going to be it's going to be flawed, and it's going to require fixing as it's running. And fixing an engine while you're driving it or using it to move is not the best. It's not at all. So if you have your clear goal of like, this is what I want the dam to do, and this is the workflow that I needed to accommodate, then if you have that set, then everything else falls into place, and it's nice. It's clockwork. You can deal with rights management. You can deal with compliance. You can have it as your single source of truth. Everything makes sense. But if you do not have that structure ahead of time, and a good consultant or a good vendor will sit you down and say, what is your workflow, or what are your intents are? If you don't have that, then, and this is just saying we've had problems with this. This has happened. I'm sure we all have experiences. But like, if you don't have that, that is like one of the biggest pitfalls that you're going to see on your return on investment, because you're going to be fighting against that. Because if you don't have a clear goal, this ROI is not going to happen.
Right. Become one with the workflow diagram.
That's exactly true. Yeah. It needs to be transparent and clear on all levels.
Yeah, it's amazing when you're kind of looking at, well, why are people not adopting? What's not working? Where are we getting the bottlenecks? And a lot of people will look at their workflow as far as where is the asset moving to, but they might not actually be looking at the metadata workflow that goes along with it,
Yeah.
which metadata is huge. If you're not getting it in the right place, or it's not accurate, you don't have a place where you're looking at the integrity of it or governing it, you're not going to get that ROI.
No. Oh yeah. All right.
Very good. I was on mute.
Oh, yeah. I think we got this. Let's just get questions on that.
Why don't we close up on a couple of success stories, things that we've witnessed over the years with our clients and people that we've worked with. For me, it was a retail chain where we started with their marketing and advertising department, their print program, and it was going through their legacy assets and organizing that for them and putting in all the metadata and so that things were searchable. And the first time that somebody needed a legacy asset that took place a couple of years ago, the marketing team came up with it within an hour or even less or whatever it was. And that signaled a bunch of other departments within that same organization all of a sudden saying, wow, this is something we need, and finding out how those other departments could utilize the same assets. And it's just a wonderful thing to be a part of, to be able to help organizations really streamline and create efficiencies and just see them humming along. For me, that's always the icing on the cake. The warm and fuzzy.
Yeah. Well, I'm with you on that. I mean, we've had I've had several, same thing with the production, where we've had instances where there's been like bottlenecks because either rested on a silo on somebody's hard drive. Once we're able to put that into a single area or repository and use that and be able to search it through metadata, it was like opening up a different world. Like, yeah, the production level just went through the roof, and like it just felt like the machine was humming along perfectly. And I think that's what you want, right? You want it to be like, these are all our materials, and everybody can use and access them. So we had that in our production instance, and it worked like a charm. But it took hard work and the legwork to get the metadata in. But once it was in, it works.
Oh.
It works.
That's it.
So I'll hop in here. My greatest success I've witnessed for DAM has been seeing a client completely replace WeTransfer with their DAM system, which they were heavily reliant upon. It was part of their business. They needed it to do business. So seeing a DAM system come in and completely take that away from that company, that was very meaningful to me.
That's meaningful to me. That's impressive. I'm impressed with that. That's nice. It's tough.
Yeah, it was. It's very tough. But
I won't let that go. I've seen they love WeTransfer. That's a thing to let go.
That's how you do it.
I can jump in quickly. Again, it seems rights management is my topic tonight, but I had the good fortune to see a well-oiled machine as far as rights management. As this one organization has an entire DAM team, which is wonderful, and I've been able to see what really happens when you have the amount of resources that you need to put that governance and the training and those policies around the metadata that goes into your system regarding your rights, those documents that are really important, those releases and permissions documents, and actually having people in place in the workflow to audit the rights. Even though that metadata is in there, there's still a human being who goes in each and every time and makes sure that the data is accurate, that the expiration is accurate, and all of that. And it's part of their workflow, it's part of their organization, it's the part of the way that they just manage their information. And it's all enabled by the DAM system itself. They don't even have an integration yet with one of the dedicated rights management systems, but they've compensated internally in their organization just through workflow and resources, and they have never been sued, to my knowledge. So, well-oiled machine. It takes, believe me, there's a lot of documentation, there's a lot of policies, and it might move a tiny bit slower in some cases when there's a hang up, typically if rights haven't come in from partners when they should have, but those are all important issues, and the DAM gives you that source of truth and a place to at least summarize and document what you have on record.
Yep. And lastly, I would say that the best implementations I've seen are tie together the people, not just the users, but the administrators of the system, the gatekeepers, with the processes that were explained earlier, with the information, and as well as the assets tied together and the taxonomies, so that you have some structure behind it. So you have the people, the process, the technology, and the information working together. That's because if you don't, if those links are, the quadfecta is not there, it's not going to work.
Thank you for adding information in there, Henrik, because so many people just say people, process, technology, and I'm like, it's an information system. There's information in there.
That's how you find it.
Yeah, they just leave it out. Oh my God.
Your DAM is only as good as its metadata, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Well, guys, that was terrific. I hope everybody that's watching got something out of today. I know I did, and I'm having more and more fun with these. I encourage everybody to be looking at our other DAM recordings and the ones in the future. But to the panelists tonight, to Deb and Ron, name the panelists, Emily and Henrik, thank you so much. Hope you guys enjoyed yourselves, and I hope to do it again soon.
Thank you, everyone.